Imagine walking into a classroom every day, eager to learn and grow, only to find that the person standing at the front of the room, the one who is supposed to guide and inspire you, is the very person tearing you down. This is the story of Jamal, a young boy with big dreams and a bigger heart who found himself the target of cruelty from someone he trusted to protect his future. Jamal was 10 years old, full of life and curiosity. He loved to learn, especially about science. At home, he spent hours building towers out of blocks and creating mini bridges with his science kit, dreaming of the day he'd become an engineer. His favorite thing to do was sit on the porch with his dad, Marcus, and point out the buildings in the skyline. One day, I'm going to build the tallest skyscraper in the world, he'd say, his eyes full of wonder. And Marcus, proud and encouraging, would respond, I believe you, son. And when you do, we'll take a trip to see it together. Jamal's family wasn't rich, but they were close-knit. His mom, Latoya, worked long hours as a nurse, and his dad managed a small hardware store. They valued education deeply and instilled in Jamal the belief that hard work and kindness could open any door. He carried that belief with him to school, eager to soak up knowledge and make his parents proud. The school year started like any other, and Jamal was excited about his new teacher, Mrs. Taylor. She had been at the school for years and was known for her strict demeanor, but Jamal didn't mind. He liked structure and believed that if he worked hard, Mrs. Taylor would see his potential. But within the first week, Jamal began to notice something unsettling. In class, Mrs. Taylor often ignored him. At first, he thought it was an accident. Maybe she didn't see his hand raised, maybe she didn't hear him ask a question. But as the days went on, it became clear that this was no coincidence. She would call on other students, even when their hands weren't raised, and overlook Jamal entirely. When he completed his assignments, she barely glanced at them before giving him average marks, even when he knew he'd done well. One incident stuck out in particular. The class was doing a science experiment, Jamal's favorite activity. He was excited and worked carefully to ensure his results were accurate. When it was time to present his findings, he walked up to the front of the room with confidence. But before he could begin, Mrs. Taylor stopped him. Jamal, are you sure you understood the instructions? She asked, her tone dripping with doubt. The class snickered, and Jamal's confidence wavered. He nodded and began his presentation, but her interruptions and dismissive comments made it impossible to finish. He sat down, feeling humiliated, his excitement crushed. At first, Jamal tried to brush it off. He thought maybe she's just tough on everyone. But as the weeks turned into months, the pattern became undeniable. Mrs. Taylor didn't treat everyone this way, just him. She would publicly criticize his handwriting, accuse him of talking during lessons when he was silent, and even punish him for things he didn't do. Once, she claimed he hadn't turned in a homework assignment and gave him a failing grade, even though he knew he had placed it on her desk. When he tried to explain, she cut him off. Stop making excuses, Jamal. You need to take responsibility for your actions. The constant ridicule began to take its toll. Jamal, once eager to participate in class, started to withdraw. He stopped raising his hand. He avoided eye contact with Mrs. Taylor. His grades, which had always been strong, began to slip. At home, his parents noticed the change. Marcus asked him one evening, "How's school going, son?" Jamal shrugged and mumbled, "It's fine." But it wasn't fine. Latoya grew concerned. She noticed that Jamal was spending less time working on his science projects and more time staring blankly at his homework. One night, she found him sitting at the kitchen table, tears streaming down his face. "Jamal, what's wrong?" she asked, kneeling beside him. He hesitated before finally confessing, "Mrs. Taylor hates me, Mom. No matter what I do, it's never good enough for her." Latoya's heart broke. She called Marcus into the room, and together they listened as Jamal recounted everything he had been enduring. Every insult, every unfair punishment, every moment of humiliation. "I try so hard, but she makes me feel like I'm not good enough," he said, his voice trembling. Marcus clenched his fists, anger simmering beneath the surface. But Latoya placed a hand on his arm and said, "We'll handle this. Turning to Jamal, she added, "You don't deserve this, baby. No one has the right to treat you this way." The next day, Marcus and Latoya met with the school principal, Mr. Bennett. They explained everything Jamal had told them and demanded an investigation. Mr. Bennett seemed hesitant at first. Mrs. Taylor had been at the school for years and had a reputation for being strict but effective. But as the conversation continued, it became clear that this was more than just strict teaching. This was heaven above, not just LOL 101. It's Over the next few weeks, the school conducted interviews with students and parents. Some of Jamal's classmates came forward admitting they had noticed Mrs. Taylor's behavior but were too afraid to speak up. One student said, "She always picks on Jamal. It's like she's looking for reasons to get him in trouble." Another added, "I've heard her make comments about how some people don't try as hard." I think she means Jamal. The turning point came when another parent shared a similar story about their child being treated unfairly by Mrs. Taylor. The evidence was overwhelming. Faced with mounting complaints, the school had no choice but to take action. Mrs. Taylor was removed from her position, and the school issued a formal apology to Jamal and his family. And Jamal's new teacher, Mrs. Henderson, was the complete opposite of Mrs. Taylor. She encouraged Jamal to ask questions, praised his hard work, and helped him regain his confidence. Slowly but surely, Jamal began to rediscover his love for learning. He started participating in class again, his curiosity and excitement returning. One day, Mrs. Henderson assigned a project on engineering, and Jamal's eyes lit up. He poured his heart into the assignment, building a model bridge that was both sturdy and creative. When he presented it to the class, his voice was steady and his smile was wide. His classmates clapped and cheered, and Mrs. Henderson said, "Jamal, this is incredible. You have a bright future ahead of you." Years later, Jamal would look back on this chapter of his life as a turning point. It had been a painful journey, but it taught him resilience and the importance of standing up for what's right. He went on to become an engineer, just as he had always dreamed, building bridges, not just the physical kind, but bridges between people, breaking down the barriers of prejudice and ignorance. Jamal's story is a reminder that even in the face of injustice, courage and perseverance can lead to triumph. If you've ever faced challenges like Jamal, know that your story matters too. Let us know in the comments, what would you have done in Jamal's shoes? And if this story inspires you, share it to help spread the message of hope and resilience.